If you have an idea, put it on the board and you present it to your colleagues. Your colleagues are there to beat it up. We never say things like, that's a dumb idea. You poke at it. You go hard, you learn from it. And sometimes you make some maybe not the best decisions there, but you learn.
Today, we're excited to welcome Mario Duarte, seasoned cybersecurity and risk management leader, former vice president of security at Snowflake, and a veteran of over 2 decades in the industry. He's led security at Snowflake through hypergrowth and a successful IPO, and earlier held key roles at Salesforce and PG&E, overseeing security operations, risk, and compliance. Currently, Mario continues to advise and lead on enterprise security strategies, bringing deep expertise in defending organizations against evolving cyber threats. His career spans both Fortune 500 giants and hypergrowth startups, giving him a rare perspective on scaling security across vastly different environments. In this episode, we explore his approach to building security cultures that scale, lessons from securing fast-moving tech companies, and how to balance innovation with resilience in a constantly changing threat landscape. Do you feel like there was a possibility or an opportunity with those companies to succeed?
Oh my goodness, 100%. Look at where they're coming from. If they're going to do something entirely different than what they've been doing for years, I don't know if I would join that. Remember I told you about timing and luck. That's luck.
Mario, I'm absolutely thrilled to have you on another episode of Inside the Silicon Mind. You have an incredible background, Mario. You've been part of one of the biggest success stories of Silicon Valley, Snowflake, and you saw Snowflake go from a very early stage company. And we'll talk about that all the way to becoming the biggest software IPO in history. But I guess the audience is always going to wonder, why would somebody as successful as you, somebody who's seen it all, had that huge success in Silicon Valley like Snowflake, come back and do it again?
Well, thank you for welcoming to the show today, and I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. I'm looking forward to it. I guess I thought I was going to do the Silicon Valley. You become successful, you decide to retire potentially, and just become an advisor and investor, and that's what I was doing. I was doing that for about 6 7 months. I stepped down from Snowflake in late 2023, and I stuck around for a couple of months so I can do the transition. So I was ready. I was ready. After like almost 10 years at Snowflake, going from like a small company all the way to startup and going IPO, everything. So I was ready for vacation, man. And I got to say there were a couple of things. First, for anybody in the audience, if you have kids, the idea of traveling the world, which is what I want to do with my wife, probably not going to be there in the cards yet, at least not full time, right? So you might do it in the summer. So it becomes difficult. So understand where your kids are at. If you're ever thinking about this in your personal life, where your kids are at in their school. In school, I mean, like by the time they go to college, it makes it easier. So that was one thing. And I love talking to startups, and I'm an advisor and investor in several companies that are seed round or 8 round. And I just get pumped. I love the energy of startups. I love the energy that people bring to a new company, and it's really addicting. And there's just a lot. Yes, a lot of startups, a vast majority of startups, unfortunately fail. Okay, so yeah, that's true. But you get so there. But those that actually win it, and when you do have a winning combination, you kind of learn some things. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later. You get addicted to that. And so that was really important. And people were talking about multi-factor authentication and enforcing multi-factor authentication. But the reality is not, people use service accounts. And service accounts are automated credentials used by a workload or an application or a script. Basically, there's no human being there. There's no human being to do some interactive login like, MFA with 502. So everybody was focusing on MFA for the security story last year with Snowflake customers. But in reality, I would argue the vast majority are dealing with service accounts. And so I knew of a company that was solving that problem, that had solved it, and I had to take an opportunity again at it. And that's where I'm at.
That's cool. As you know, I'm an investor in Aembit, but also I've been very much part of that journey working with Mike Spicer in the early days. It was really exciting working with him and helping build parts of the engineering team. It's hard to replicate that, hard to replicate what Snowflake achieved. Let's start off with Snowflake. I mean, we'll definitely touch on where you are today, but going back to Snowflake, the early days. Firstly, take me back to the very beginning, 2014, when you heard about Snowflake. Where were you? Who told you about it? How did you come across Snowflake?
Well, I had an offer from another company, and so offer ready to sign, and it was a good offer, and for a company I wanted to go work at. But I thought this is serendipity, man. This is weird stuff. This only happens in the valley, quite on. Oh,
Yes.
um, I get a call from somebody, and no, somebody I don't know. It's like actually he, as it turns out, he was the director and then VP of engineering at Snowflake. But he wanted to chat with me, and the company was Snowflake. That's the name of the company. And I looked at the website, and there was nothing, just a picture of my future CEO, Bob Muglia. And that was it. Nothing about what they were doing. And I swear, man, I thought it was a joke. I kid you not. I thought some buddy of mine was playing a trick on me. So I decided to drive to San Mateo, expected, hey, you're on candid camera. I swear, I thought it was going to be some candid camera thing. Because who names a company Snowflake? Well, apparently somebody did. And so I interviewed with four engineers, and I freaking was like, oh my goodness, this is insane. This is such a good idea. The right time, potentially. I had to jump on that opportunity. So I turned down an offer. I don't have a job. Okay. So I turned down that offer, and I was, between jobs. I turned down offer that I wanted to go work at this company for a no-name company with an idea that was so crazy. And think about it, put your database in the public internet. Who would do such a thing, right? Like that just sounds insane. And I had to go back to Snowflake three other times. I interviewed close to 20 people. So I interviewed, like the whole interview took 6 weeks. I thought it was a joke. And then nobody was ever going to hire me there. I mean, I thought I practically I interviewed with the janitor of Snowflake, but I ended up getting the opportunity, man, the opportunity of a lifetime.
At that time, as far as the founders, investors, who did you meet with initially?
So the first four engineers that were deep into the security space, because this was going to be really important. So they drilled me. But then the following interview was with Bob Mulia, the CEO, with Benoit and Thierry, the founders. And then I think it was for anybody who's watching this, if you really want a company, if you really want to get in that company, what I had done was I did some research. Like, okay, now that I've talked to you guys, my first interview, what would be some concerns that I would have as a client? And so I knew I was meeting with the CEO and the founder, Benoit and Thierry. So I put a deck together and I did some analysis of what I would do for the next 2 years if I was hired at Snowflake. But I didn't go and present it. I just had it on my laptop. And so sure enough, for any of our listeners, if somebody be prepared for some kind of weird question or something that's going to make you think outside of your box or think strategically. If you really want that company, do your homework, is my advice. So I did. So when one of the founders asked, what are you going to do? I said, well, I actually put together a game plan for us based on my interviews with your people. Can I show it to you? And they were like totally surprised. So man, I thought I had it nailed. I thought I'm in, right? Like I got this job. No, I had to come back another 2 times and interview another group of people. It was ridiculous.
That's a very unique story, and what a great tip, how to get the job, basically. Right, so tell me about Snowflake. Right, so you joined this company. What was it, 50-person company at the time you joined?
Yeah, 50. I'm employed 50.
And
By the way, I started interviewing at 30 employees.
wow, it was moving that quick.
It was moving quick. It was moving quick. Then it slowed down, and then it moved quick. It was like, don't think of things happening so fast. The hockey stick may be there, but the hiring falls behind of the hockey stick.
So Mario, when you joined, there was no product, no customers. You saw this incredible startup turn into a huge success story that today everyone looks at as a very special story. And what made Snowflake special in those early days?
Not to say anything negative about really smart folks who are starting out in their career, but I'm just going to speak about myself. I got into the security industry back when I was 26, 27. And I built my first security team when I was 29 years old. But I tell you something, man, my maturity level was so bad. I could not imagine. I just did not have the wisdom, the maturity. Oh my goodness, I must have been a terrible. I just think back, I must have been a horrible manager. And I was part of that original dot-com bust. And, a lot of the people that I was working with were in their 20s as well. I just felt that you needed to have a little bit of experience at the leadership level. And that's the first thing that caught my eye. Bob Muglia is an amazing leader with amazing background in history. Benoit he's a brilliant man who's been around. I mean, both Cherry, Benoit, and Bob were all in their 40s already, late 40s, mid
Mhm.
40s, late 40s. So I wanted to have some experience, people that have actually done something. And that was really important because what they did, because when you have greenfield like that, you can put in place a lot of the things that are potentially going to make you successful. The culture. I'm not going to talk about the architecture in Snowflake because that was huge. We could talk about it later, but the culture was really important. Early on, we believed in a everybody can question any ideas. Somebody can get on a board. It doesn't matter who you are, who your title is. If you have an idea, you put it on a board and you present it to your colleagues, and your colleagues are there to beat it up, but they don't attack the human being. We never say things like, that's a dumb idea. You poke at it and you go hard and you learn from it. And sometimes you make some, maybe not the best decisions there as the guy who's presenting, but you learn. But it doesn't become emotional. It's not like they're attacking you, right? They're not attacking the person. They're not attacking you as a person. They may be poking holes at the idea, making your idea better. And that was part of the culture day one.
Sounds like it was, before we talk about the architecture, as you said, it was the people and the culture that was being built. And it sounds like a culture of continuous learning and radical candor.
Complete. I mean, I think of Dalio, Dalio's book on
Hmm.
principles. It was
Yeah.
like living the principles in so many ways, that
Wow.
book, because people were very transparent. But in order to be very transparent, radically transparent, you have to trust your fellow colleague. And you have to be like, you have to break bread with them. You need to be with them. You need to understand them and listen and be a good listener. And then you can argue till the cows come about the idea. And we did always.
So let's talk about the architecture because, again, we are talking about one of the biggest success stories in recent time. This idea, as you said, you went in and you thought this is incredible, but then going on as the years went on, this amazing product was being built and the architecture behind it. What was so special about Snowflake from an architectural standpoint?
Well, I will, it's been said before. A lot of success is luck. You have to be there at the right time, at the right place, with the right people. Now, you got to work your ass off, and you got to bring some goods to the table, right? So it's not just just luck. It's not. But the majority of it is luck. And so how does that intertwine with the architecture? Well, think about this. At least for Snowflake, for years, the database story was you had limited amount of storage. Or even if you had sand next to it, there was always some limited function, physicality. Most people were running their own data centers at that time. Yes, AWS started, we're talking 2013, 2012, 2013. So AWS had been around. It started becoming popular, more used, more accepted by security people. Azure wasn't just, it was there, but it wasn't as popular. So it was AWS primarily. But the cost of storage was really expensive at one time when you were doing it in your on-prem, right? There's a physicality component. You got to add more drives. You got to add more space. You got to have more electricity, all of that. But something really interesting and wonderful occurred with the rise of the cloud providers. The cost of storage started dropping crazy because, the whole economies of scale, blah, blah, blah. Basically, AWS was making storage really cheap. And so the idea was, if you could do that, if storage is no longer the big problem, then why don't we have computes come up and use that storage, but have like their their tables, their schemas, their data all store long term in that S3 in blob storage, for example, and only
Mm.
use it in memory and when you're, use these compute instances to analyze, compute, and look at this data and give you results, and the results go back into this to the blob storage. What that did was separate compute from storage. That was huge because it hadn't been done. But in order to do that, you needed to build a database that was born in the cloud. So it wasn't like if you look at Redshift from AWS, Redshift was an on-prem solution before. It was not born in the cloud. AWS bought a company, I forget their name, and then they changed it to Redshift, and they kind of, I don't want to call the baby ugly, but it wasn't a pretty baby, right? It wasn't a pretty cloudy baby, okay? It was not. And that's always had challenges for Redshift, even with Athena. Athena is more all cloud, but the original Redshift was not. And that created problems for them. So we built a whole database from the ground up using cloud technology. And one more part of that was having a lingua franca to unite all this data. And one of them was JSON and XML was popular, but JSON was blowing up. And every computer on the internet was creating JSON logs. And in that, there's a lot of data, a lot of analytics, a lot of user metadata, which marketing companies love to use. That, a combination of that with what we did made it exciting.
How was the market responding to Snowflake in the early days, as far as the design partners slash early adopters? How were they responding to what was being built?
So remember, architecture is key. So anybody who's listening to the program, think about your architecture. Your architecture needs to survive the next wave of changes that are going to happen in the industry. How long is it going to last for? Because you're going to continue your own success, folks. Your own technology success. Eventually, as you build so many customers and you have a lot of customers, they're going to hold you back. They will, because you can't change things so rapidly as you used to. You become a beholden to your own success, and that tends to be. I'm not the one who said this, right? There's a lot of books about for entrepreneurs and successful companies that don't do so well later on. You got to think of the architecture, but at the same time, you're going to have lean years. Most of us are going to have lean years because you're just going to have to get out there and get people to understand it. And if it's a new idea, new technology, there are going to be some early adopters and some that are not going to be early adopters. So nothing I'm telling you right here is earth shattering. It's basic 101. One needs to find that one market, that one industry that's going to keep you, floating while you build the in our case was build more controls, build more credibility, so the laggers can come in and then start using us. For us, was the marketing groups. So marketing companies love to analyze data, and they were sitting on a ton of data, but they couldn't analyze it quick enough. And that data was in JSON format. So remember I told you that JSON format? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because people would go and interact with a website, and what happens? They generate traffic, and most of that traffic is stored like JSON blobs. So they needed a way to analyze that, and they were willing to be. I don't want to poo-poo on marketing teams, but let's just say security is not their number one priority. Okay, so they were willing to accept a young company that, yeah, had a lot of good security story, but maybe hadn't proven itself in the market yet, security wise. So they kept us afloat for the first 2 years, and then things started happening after that.
So when you say things started happening, that J curve, how quick into Snowflake's journey before things started to really accelerate on the sales side?
It was, I think, by 2016. So we came out in GA 2015. By 2016, I mean, we were growing 200%, 200 to 300% annually. We knew we had something going on, but it was all, again, the marketing teams were the ones driving us, or industries that were heavily marketing. So you only have, but if you stay there only, you might risk, depending on, changes that are happening in the industry. So you have to expand. So I think around 2016, 2017, we started noticing a shift to different industries. Uh, Fitbit was the first big player we had, and Fitbit cared about HIPAA a lot. So we had to make sure it was compliant, and it was our biggest client first. It was our first biggest client. And that started getting into the health industry. So now we had the whole HIPAA. That kind of was, ooh, this is cool. And then the next big player was Capital One. Capital One really, I would argue, maybe Capital One put us in the map.
Working with startups, being a member of a startup and seeing that growth, whether you're an investor or a founder, something I hear quite a lot is you would know pretty quickly whether it's a year or 2 years into the startup's journey, whether or not this is going to be a big hit or not. And I'd like to ask that question because I feel like the general consensus is that's the case, and not to discredit the companies that maybe show real promise possibly 4 or 5 years later. What's your opinion? Do you feel like it takes only the first couple of years before you know there's something truly magical happening, or can that magic appear a bit further down the line?
I have worked for 5 startups in my life, in my 25 plus years. 3 of them went belly up. One of them got acquired, so I made a little money. And my fifth one, Snowflake. I don't know if this is based in science or not. I think there is a virtuous cycle that happens, and it happens early. First year to maybe 3 years, you'll see it. Maybe not the first year, but you start seeing it really quickly. And it just feeds on itself. People like winners. I hate to say that. They like winners. We're just we're herd, right? We're animals that like to be in herds. We do. Most of us human beings do. And so we tend to follow. And as I mentioned with Capital One, once Capital One said, "Yeah, we're using MX," that was kind of like the acceptance. That was kind of like you guys all can use it, even though those slaggers. So I think you do need to show traction. Within 2 years, you have something. If it's not there, it becomes tougher. I'm not saying it's not going to happen if you're in stealth mode and you're not. This, by the way, this does not include stealth mode. You can be in
Mm.
stealth mode for 2, 3 years. Okay, got it, folks? Not stealth mode here. This is after you
When
go
after you go GA.
GA. Yeah, after you go GA within 2 years. But again, I don't know if it's based on science. To me, in the first 2 years, you'll know you got something. We knew we had something.
Okay, so I definitely want to double click on this because this is interesting. So let's not consider the companies that are in stealth, the companies that decide to go GA. Is there a argument to say that you might go GA a little bit too soon, and that could affect that timeline, or is going GA too soon? Is that a possibility?
So Bob was was my boss, right? He was the CEO of Snowflake, and I've always mentioned Bob and other folks as well, but Bob taught me a lot. And one of the things Bob did at the company I was at before, at another dot com, I'm not going to name, I don't want to badmouth anybody, they don't exist anywhere. But anyway, I was at a company where if a feature, even if a feature had to be fully tested, it would be put out in production, and it was constantly breaking. It was constantly creating outages for our clients. And so the CEO of my previous company I was at, some other company, was just he didn't. I'm not saying he didn't care, but he didn't think enough about the ramifications of outages and what that pain problem was for its early customers. Bob, uh, yeah, Silicon Valley Bank, this is years ago, basically says, "I'll use Snowflake. I used Snowflake before even GA." He told him that. He said that to us. Because, I mean, they were a bank too. Silicon Valley Bank was great banks. I know they're still around, but anyway, amazing story, right? And I'm sad, there's a sad story in the end, but maybe not. But Bob said, "We're not ready."
Wow.
It turned out paying client, potential client, a paying customer, potential paying customer, because he said we weren't ready. Imagine that kind of maturity, that wisdom, that discipline. And that's why we didn't go GA till like 2015.
Wow. So from initial idea to when you joined to when the company went GA, how long was that?
So I joined in October of 2014, and we didn't go GA till June, July.
Of
What's that?
2015.
2015. Yeah.
Right. So at least a couple of years.
No, I mean, it was about 9 to 12. I would say 9 to 12 months, 9 to 12 months. I joined in 2014, and we went GA in 2015 of July.
But prior to that,
Oh, yeah. The company started sometime in 2012 in August, but there was nothing. It was just kind of ideas. We didn't really start really working on anything till like maybe the fall of 2013. So yeah, you're right.
so Bob said that he said to a paying customer, we're not
A
ready.
potential paying customer.
Wow, that's amazing. That discipline and that, as you said, maturity and experience is quite rare. And you've been part of a number of startups, as you said. You've been part of a few that have failed, one that has been acquired, and one that had the success that Snowflake has had. When you look back at the ones that failed, do you feel like there was a possibility or an opportunity with those companies to succeed if they had someone like Bob to execute better?
Oh my goodness, 100%. I mean, but it's also, remember I told you about timing and luck. That's luck, timing. Now, the part that you can, as you're interviewing, as you're in the market, or you're thinking of joining a startup, early startup, look at the pedigree of the founders. I know it sounds basic. I get it. It sounds basic, okay? But here's the thing. If the founders are coming out with a new idea, look at their DNA. Look at where they're coming from. If they're going to do something entirely different than what they've been doing for years, yeah, I don't know if I would join that. So to me, even when I look at startups, when I do my investments, I want to make sure I know who those people are. What did they do? Think about Gem Security. I invested in Gem Security in the seed round, and they got acquired by Wiz. But when I met with those guys, the thing that was really cool about them, what really impressed me, was that they were doers, they were practitioners, and the stuff that we're building was a problem they were experiencing, that all practitioners in that space, in the IR space or cloud space, cloud security space, were experiencing. And they had that. They had worked on it for 5, 6 years and felt that pain and said, I need to go change it. The same thing happened with Benoit and Thierry. The reason they came out with Snowflake is they felt the pain. They worked at Oracle and they saw what Oracle. Now, I'm not bad mouthing Oracle here, but there was some challenges to do Oracle, right? And certainly everybody's some technology challenges. I'm not trying to pull on Oracle, but that was just a fact.
It's an interesting model. You've got the founders of Snowflake, and then you have Bob as CEO. Spicer comes on in the beginning as founding CEO. That's a very powerful playbook that Spicer's built. Why do you think that playbook is so not only unique but also extremely successful?
Mike Spicer he has a lot of wisdom that allows you know your space, you know where you're really good at, and you're willing to accept other people's inputs and allow people to experiment and run with it and fail. I know the word fail quickly, it's overused, but Spicer had that mentality, and it was the right kind of. It was basically told Benoit and Thierry, go build it and see what happens. Like, it gave them the space to fail, to come out with new ideas. And the thing with Benoit and Thierry, Benoit especially, he thinks huge, man. Like every time because I reported to Benoit after Bob left, and he would come out with, like, just French accent, Mario. Oh, we got a new thing here, and I'm like, what the heck, Benoit? You're gonna give me a heart attack. This is gonna be so hard to see. What are we gonna go do? He goes, we're gonna have to figure it out. So always thinking huge, man, huge. And when Mike Spicer early on, before Bob came in, he allowed them to think huge. He allowed them to explore, to fail, not majorly, but fail in those micro decisions. That's really important. And when I go back to the companies that I've been at, you don't have that. You didn't have that maturity, quite honestly. That's what I've seen. You didn't have that experience. These were really smart people. These are really
Yeah.
smart people.
I mean, this is it, right? The reason I asked that question is purely because I feel like there are many companies that fail not because of the merit of the idea of the market, but maybe the inexperience of the founders, the not executing right, not having the right backers behind you. Is that how you feel about it?
There's a billion and one different ways that a startup is going to fail, and there's only one that's probably going to be the one that's going to make you successful.
Yeah.
There's just so many, Monday back quarterbacking, right? Monday quarterbacking, right? Like, there's so many what if I look back at every, like, again, like the company I started when I was in the dot com at Zuma that I was part of, we were the first, like, what AWS was doing. We were doing it in 2000, and it was, wow, this is great. But nobody, I mean, we were doing okay. We were doing well. We were going to go public, but then the dot com happened and everybody failed. All our clients went out of business. We went out of business. So that was
That's interesting. So what you're saying is there was a startup you were part of that was perhaps before AWS, but timing wasn't right, execution wasn't right. Mary, do you feel like the market recognizes you because of your creativity, your as you said, your discipline when Bob said no? Or are there other factors where the market truly recognizes you as a potential success story, like Capital One did? What does it take for a company like Capital One to say, this is it, this is the one?
if you're a startup and you're coming with an idea that you got to, oh, my goodness, this sounds so basic. Sorry. No earth shattering here, but know your freaking audience. Know who you're selling to. Okay. And so if you're going to sell to engineers, let's just say you're going to sell to engineers as an example, cloud engineers, and you're developing an application, and the application you're developing is what is going to drive the business. That's what you're selling. So get into the basics. What is it that the company's doing? What is it selling? What is the service? What's the widget? What is that? And then focus on that. If you're focusing on, as an example, let's talk about DevOps or cloud eng or engineers, and you're building a product. That's the thing for your business. That's what you're going to make money out of. There is a lot of the temptation often, and I'm not saying it's wrong, is to go build it yourself with open source solutions. And so that you do. You have a lot of these companies who do that, and they're very successful at times. But there are some stuff that as you build it, it becomes really hard to maintain. It's a great idea. You put it in place, you test it out, people start using it, it seems to call, but it doesn't scale. So, and then you realize that you need more people added to those resources. And whatever, if that product is just a feature for your company, it's not the main product, then it doesn't get well funded. See my point? And so, as a startup, what you want to do is you want to know that client. You want to know what ticks him. With Capital One, they had attempted to do this thing. And they are the Capital Ones of the world who attempt to build their own stuff internally. They'll use some open source technologies, but then quickly realize, and I mean quickly within a year or 2 years, realize this is not scalable. I'm going to go have to hire an army of people to maintain this. And it's not my main line of like work. It's not my what's paying the bill. That's an opportunity for a startup to say, I have something. And why I love startups, because a lot of new things come out of startups, okay? The bigger players, they're not in the business of coming out with new crazy new ideas. This is an overgeneralization. You have Google, Microsoft. I get it, but you get my point. In AWS, I don't want to keep them out of the picture there.
So, Mario, tell me about the security challenges. You were the director of security, VP of security at Snowflake. As far as those early days of Snowflake, how pivotal was security, and I guess second part to that question, how important was security to not just to the business but to the customers?
Chris Degnan, our chief revenue officer at Snowflake, who just recently stepped down, I think he's retiring or he stepped down already. He would put every Monday, like every company, Monday or Friday, whatever, Monday, you would have on all hands. And in those days, we didn't have that much remote folks, right? It was pre-COVID. So we're all in the same office, little office that could hardly hold 25, 30 people. And every freaking Monday morning, he had a top five list of things that we need in order for me to sell the product. Three of those were security, and it were all on me. It was constantly on me. When are we going to get this? When are we going to get encryption at rest for doing? And when are we going to get this whole key management that's going to protect the data from being, compromised by an attacker against access to this data? How do you protect it? Three of the top five things that he said he needed to sell Snowflake were security related. And he reminded me of it every Monday until we went GA.
That makes this a very interesting segue because you played a pivotal role in that security part of the business. How much of your role today, when you think about where you are today with Aembit, is because of that success story? You know, the way you are getting recognized as an investor, as an advisor, startups want you, VCs want you. How much of it is because of what you achieved at Snowflake?
I would not be where I'm at today and all the opportunities that I have opened up because of that event of working at Snowflake. And people want success stories. Look, this is not a humble brag. I'm not at the caliber of a Bob Muglia or a Benoit Carey. Those people are brilliant. Okay, like my job is to make sure those people don't get in trouble, right? Right. So I get out of the way, but work with them, but make sure that nobody gets into trouble. And that was early on. And understand your role in a company. You don't have to be the number one player or the smartest person in there. In fact, you don't want to be the smartest person. What you want to be is you want to be able to become an enabler, find those areas where you can bring teams together. So, find your strength. And hopefully in that startup that you're looking at, you'll match that strength that you have, that one has. And yeah, I'm going to say, if you're in your second, third, company, a startup, you should know what you're good at and what you're bad at, okay? And you got to match it. I would say I'm very blessed. I have been very blessed because now doors really open up. And I've been in the industry before Snowflake. I had been in the industry for 17, 20 years, or no, 17 years. Nothing like that happened. I mean, a little bit, but nothing like this ever.
It's a big win. You finished off at Snowflake, and your plan was you're going to retire or you're going to take a huge break. What was you? Because it didn't take too long. Was it 6 months before you were back on it again? What were you thinking at that time?
What the fudge am I doing? What is going on with me? I'm going back in this thing. That's what I thought. I was like, what's, but look, I, I knew I was in trouble 30 days after leaving Snowflake because there's just not enough walking in the park or walking in the woods and going to the beach, playing guitar for hours. It eventually gets a little tired, and then I start investing in advisory and do more advisory work with startups. And as I mentioned, I get addicted to that energy. Such a great energy. And because you know the good thing about startups is you can make an impact. You don't have to wait. You don't have to go through like the ministry of no to approve your request for something. That's what happens when you get larger and you go public. There's all these regulatory compliance things that you have to adhere to that you never had to when you were in a small startup. You can get things done, make it happen quickly. that that's amazing, and I wanted that again. And like I said, I thought, there were so many opportunities. This pitch for Ambit, without selling Ambit as a company or product here, but in the non-human identity space, this whole non-human NHI space, there's just a lot of concentration in one part of it, the IGA, the monitoring and alerting and keeping things, health checks to see that how are people using this non-human identities and these credentials that are being stored or shared by computers to computers. There's just a lot of concentration there, but there was not the solution to enforce the right solution. And as a security practitioner, everybody pitches me about visibility and monitoring insights, which, by the way, really important. You got to do. I am not dismissing that. You have to do it. But then you got the oh crap moment. Now I have all this information. What do I do with it? How do I fix it? How soon do I how long do I have before stuff goes awry? And so that's why I decided to, go back to a company because it's an exciting space that nobody else is doing. It's hard. Don't get me wrong, super hard, but you don't just quit because it's hard.
How did you meet the folks at Aembit? Was it through the founders? Did you meet them directly?
I was introduced to a colleague of ours, and he said, "Go and talk to this guy." And so I was just talking, and I met David Goldschlag, and immediately within 10 minutes, I was like, "Oh yeah, we got to work." And so it was an immediate thing. And then I said, "Well, I'm not going to put you in production yet. Let's go." Look, everybody, if security people are here listening to this show as well, and for all entrepreneurs as well and startups. Everybody would tell you about budgets. Oh, I don't have the budget. I don't have the budget. I don't have the budget. That's true. But everybody has $25,000, $50,000 budget available. We all do. Every company does, even the small ones. Even things that are not budgeted. You do. You have this, money stashed for a rainy day kind of thing. That's an opportunity. Say, you know what? I'm not going to give you production, but I'll pay you to do this small, to test it out. Let's do 12 months. I'll pay you 25, 50,000. And you do a small, don't be greedy. Don't be a greedy company that's taking advantage of the smaller player. You want the smaller player to succeed. But you don't go through this effort of testing out and implementing a new technology or a new vendor into your company, a startup, if you're just going to abuse them on price and they're never going to be successful because you know what? You're going to be looking for another solution in 2, 3 years. You want a company to be successful. You want that startup to be successful, so be reasonable, be understandable, make partners with them, seriously, because you're in a relationship with them that could last 5, 6, 7 years if you do it right.
Well, that's it. I mean, I recently spoke to I had Scott Dietzen on the show, and Scott is a he's a legend of Silicon Valley. He's built multiple companies. He took Pure Storage IPO. Now he's the CEO of Augment. And one of the questions that I asked him was around looking at customers and how do you think about the success of a business based on how customers respond to you. And he made an extremely valid point that I keep repeating to myself today is customers will pay you once, but to create that repeatable motion where they pay you again and again and again, that's based on the value you add. So you want your customers to be successful. You want to add value, so they don't just pay you once and regret it. They'll keep coming back and refer more people to you.
Yeah, it's a combination, right? Because if there's a one, why do it if it's just a one hit wonder? It's only gonna be 12 months. You're not gonna be right. That's
Yeah.
not. But it's a two-way street as well. The early adopters and design partners help your company that you're being a design partner. Give them a small little piece to test it out, and then lend and expand. Help them with lend and expand. Now it's going to be not a crazy amount of expand money wise, but every VC that invests in a startup, every year they come back before they're raising money. That startup, they want to see what's your story. How have you grown? How have you grown not just by different customers, which is important, but have you lended and expanded? And that's a good story. So when you're a design partner, get a good price as a design partner, but also leave enough space as it's going to grow. In other words, don't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Let them have an egg every so often.
Let's talk about where you are today. David is an incredible founder and CEO. I first call I had with him, I thought I have to put some money in. For you, what was so special about Aembit that you thought this is something I need to be part of?
They are doing something that, if you think about the improvements that we've made, investments that we've made in user authentication in the years, and yes, you still get a lot of breaches. Yes, a lot of credentials get exposed, user credentials. But if you just step back and you start thinking things like we gotten rid of passwords, so you can use your TPM chip on your phone or your laptop to authenticate you and the laptop. So there's no password anymore. And then you can use FIDO2, MFA with FIDO2. So you no longer need to even enter anything. You just like your fingerprint or your face. And you can also ensure that the posture of that laptop that that user is using, one, it belongs to you as a company, but also it's compliant, it's patched, it's running your EDRs, everything's working well. We've made a lot of advances making it harder on the attackers. Why haven't we done that with machines to machine authenticate? And the reason is, I think it's a real simple problem. Maybe. It's easy to do in AWS if you're just in AWS, or in Azure, if you're just in Azure or in GCP. They all have their own authentication mechanisms. AWS has STS. Awesome. Great. It really makes it hard for an attacker to compromise those tokens, even if they got them. Problem occurs when you go cross boundaries. You go from an on-prem to a cloud provider to a SaaS vendor. All of that, think about all the tokens, all the secrets that are being used there. You can't use Kerberos, man. You're not going to use Kerberos, which has been working great. You're like, hey, what about Kerberos, Mario? Oh, yeah, it works with Active Directory. You got to be on-prem, man. All right? You're not going to throw Kerberos out in the public internet. What Ambit does, and it did, and I'm so, again, fortunate to be here, is find an eloquent solution that has been problematic in the industry for years, this hybrid model to have tokens to be managed and to enforce and to make sure that that workload, that machine that's trying to communicate with that application is the right machine and is compliant and that's meeting your security requirements and that is the right machine at the right location at the right time. That's pretty cool. That's a big problem, right? Because you got these tokens and secrets that are being accidentally posted in your GitHubs, your GitLabs of the world. You know how long it takes for an attacker to gain access of a password or secret uploaded to GitLab or GitHub? Want to guess? Okay. 5 years, 6 years ago, it was about 2, 3 hours. 3 years ago, maybe an hour. I would say even a year ago, 30 minutes. It takes less than a minute now. You put a
Wow.
credential on the public internet in GitHub, the attackers will gain access to it within a minute of you publishing it. That's a big problem.
You're in the airport. You're waiting for your flight. You log into the local Wi-Fi. You're logging into your company email. There's important files in there. In a situation like that, what could an attacker do?
Yeah. So I think I'll give you an example. Let's say mostly think of it instead of a user, it's a machine. So how do machines? Think about your CI/CD pipeline. So you have Jenkins, or you have some sort of like Jenkins is a code repository that allows you to run jobs, automated jobs. So think about anything that has to be automated. And I'm not even talking about AI agents. Put that away. I'm just talking about now. How do you authenticate a code or a laptop or a code, an application or a machine to another machine? Well, you have to give it some sort of secrets, some sort of tokens. So in the CI/CD pipeline, a lot of those secrets, even if you're using a vault, no knock on vaults, the vault's kind of a dummy thing. It trusts you. It gives you a token that you then use the token to go and authenticate to your Snowflake environment or maybe to your AWS environment. But it doesn't know if that thing that requested it for that token is the right machine. So if you expose those to the public internet, an attacker could grab those tokens and get into your CI/CD and launch a new application trusting the CI/CD trust that because you got the token, and then you can install bad things in your production environment, all the way to stealing your client's code or data. It's huge. It's a big problem.
It's a big problem. Looking at your career, you've been at startups. As you said, you've been part of 5 startups. 3 have failed. One's acquisition. One's Snowflake, big IPO success. How big do you think Aembit can be?
And it can be as big as the customers at the speed that they can embrace the problem and understand this is not a problem you're going to be able to. I hate to say this to our customers or prospects. If you have a hybrid environment, you're not going to be able to solve this easily. And it's going to take you months, years to do it. And even after you think you have a solution, it's going to take you an army of people to do it. Is that the business you're in? Once customers, and it's happening, man, it's happening right now. If you talk to me or Embed people maybe a year, even a year ago, a year and a half ago, we were still educating people about one, there is a solution and there's a big problem here. And so, how big can a company become? It really is how quickly our customers and prospects understand they're already getting a problem, by the way. It's happening. Now, the question becomes, how do they trust you? How do you get in their environment? Because it's a critical process that we have. I'm trying to give you hopefully an educated answer to your question. Look, it could be a very big company, a very big space. If you look at the numbers, the user to NHIs is 40 to 1. 40 for every user, there's 40 NHI users, non-human. And that's not even including AI agents, which is even become a bigger nightmare. Okay, so who's the user? Think of Okta. Think of where Okta is at right now. They're handling users or ping. Think of a world where you have something that's managing even 40 times what Okta or ping is managing on machines, and especially with the growth of AI. So it could be potentially a very big opportunity with Ambit. I say potentially it could be just, I want to say, yes, we're going to kill it. We're going to do it. I have to always be thoughtful about, I've been through the startup world and there's a lot of things that can go bad.
You've also been an investor, an advisor. When you think of your investment strategy and how you think about parting ways with your money, earlier on you did mention you look at the founders. Can you kind of give me your philosophy, your investment playbook? What do you look for when deciding to part ways with your money?
No matter how geeky the solution is, if you as an investor do not understand it and you give your decision making to, oh, well, they're smarter than I am, they know what they're talking about. I don't understand what that is, but maybe because I'm not smart enough to understand that. That's a problem. If you don't understand it, I'm sorry. I mean, I'll just say I don't invest in Bitcoin. So I know there's a lot of stuff out there. God bless you all, and you're smarter people than I am. I don't understand it. I can't understand it. So I'm not because of that, I've never invested in it. So I only go into a space if I'm going to invest my own money in a space that I know. And my space is security. Now, for my own investments, direct investments, that's security. If you're going to do something outside of what my expertise or one's expertise, use your wealth management team, of course, right? But for me, you know what I mean?
It's an area you need to understand, but also the founders.
Well, first you have to understand, and then the founders, and the founders. I'll say it over and over. It is so important. The founders. I want to know what the founders are doing. What did they do before? And if this is a complete different jump to whatever they were doing, there's no connection to what they were doing, or it's a big stretch, you're going to tell me that somehow you magically were able to understand a problem that's being daunting to the industry, yet you've never had any experience with it? Come on, man. Doesn't happen. I don't see it. You got to have a connection.
How many times have you been in front of founders and thought to yourself, they don't understand what they're building?
What I think is they are so blinded by their own. God bless them. They're so dedicated. They're going, charging that. They're just blinded, man. They're blinded. It's not ambition. They just want to do well. God bless them. But if you don't see your own stuff and your own challenges and your own weaknesses I have people who've said, I have no weaknesses in the product. I don't see a competitor that can beat us in this because blah blah. But just I mean, literally say just that arrogance is like, are you freaking kidding me? Great, have somebody else put the money, not me. That's not who I am. I want to know during my interviews with people, tell me how is anybody going to beat you? Tell me how you can beat your product. Tell me how a potential some other company or some other vertical can take over or can beat you. How do you think about that? And if I'm looking at a deer at a headlight, staring at a headlight, I don't want to deal with that. I want people to understand. I want people to, Andy, I'm part of the Andy Grove generation, not generation, but followers. Yeah, I am paranoid as all hell. I want you to tell me who's your potential competitor and why, and how you're going to beat it. If they can't think that way,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to deal with it.
No, you're right. I mean, look, I know I've read the book as well. Only the Parents Survive. That inflection point, constantly keeping your fingers on the pulse, is important. Completely off topic, but you made a point which I have to agree with you on. When you think of Bitcoin, Where do you see this crypto market going?
I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to continue, but I think there will be, I mean, there are some really smart people in the security industry that are from there. I think about my friends at Coinbase. They're freaking brilliant security people. And what they're doing is amazing work, amazing. I think there's just going to be a lot of ups and downs. The world of the less physical you get, the less you're selling a hard widget, something you can hold to. And yeah, in software, well, Mario, guess what? Software is there's not a lot of physicality. I get it. But the less physical world you're associated with, and the more less frictionless you get, the more chances are for major up and downs and corrections to occur. And I don't have any appetite for it. So I think it will continue to be there. I just don't have the appetite. I honestly don't want to wake up. I hear people like, hey, I just made 30, 80,000 on my Bitcoin today. And like every morning, come on, dude, good luck. If that's your life, if that's what you're thinking about, that's what you want to do for your investment, good luck. 'Cause it's not me.
Mario, so a couple of things I want to finish off with because it really has been a pleasure talking to you today, and I feel like we can talk for hours.
Likewise.
The life of a entrepreneur, a founder, a chief information security officer at a startup is fun. It's exciting, and I hear this all the time. Being part of a startup is, as you said, you said you're addicted to being part of startups. How do you compartmentalize the busyness of being in a startup and your personal life?
I just finished reading a book called Deep Work. I even brought it to her. That's actually part of what deep work is about. That when you're dedicating time for work, I know. If your CEO calls you in the middle of the night, you better call. Okay, so it's not like I'm saying, "Hey, Mario, you told me I don't have to answer the phone call from your CEO." Really? No. I mean, if your best client's calling you, you answer the phone when the bat phone dials, right? And you grab that. But it can't be everything that is not critical or important or from a person that you need to answer the phones because it's a career limiting maneuver if you don't answer the phone. So really what you have to do is we don't have, if you're going to be doing some deep work, and deep work means creative work, new ideas and helping with new ideas. And that's what the startups are all about. Having interrupted work, emails, Slack, texts, watching what's in the news or politics. Like I tell you something, I don't even watch news anymore. I don't listen, I don't read about it. Every so often something will flash on my investment. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh boy. Okay, whatever. All I'm trying to say is you only have enough amount of energy in a day, and then you have to figure out how to use that energy wisely, especially if it's around business and creativity. If you're constantly bombarded with things, you're always on drama, always interrupted work, you're never going to do anything. You're never going to get deep thoughts, deep work to actually make it work. So you have to be very disciplined. And discipline means when I'm on work, I'm going to be on work. But when I'm off work, you're off work. Okay. And I'm not saying this for everybody. I'm talking about the people who are actually building things, the people who are actually doing things, or potentially starting a new company or running a new company. You do need some space. You need to be you need to be disciplined and say, this is my family time, or this is my alone time to kind of clear my mind, because then I got to be on the next day. And you're going to deal everything in technology or new businesses is most of it is not even technology, it's people, dealing with customers. And if you're not emotionally here, you're going to bark at people and you're going to be mean to people. And that may get you, sometimes it may get you to be successful a little bit, but in the long run, you're not going to survive.
100% agree. I think compartmentalizing between the work we do and it is real value work. I mean, we're building companies, we're supporting companies to grow, and we're investing. These are all exciting things, but compartmentalizing that and being able to create a separation between the two. But as you said, if your CEO or an important customer or customer calls, you pick up the phone. Just like if you're at work and an important personal matter comes to your desk, you've got to deal with it. So I think this is my thing with work-life balance. I just don't think it exists, at least not in my book. I get the whole separation and compartmentalizing component of being able to separate those two, but sometimes this overlaps into this overlaps into that, and being able to be thoughtful and intentional with how you spend your time.
Well, yeah, I mean, but I'm sure you're not taking every call that is getting dialed on your phone, right? And
No.
you're not if you're reading emails all day long, even at nighttime. I don't know, man. Can it wait? If my boss, hey, here's my phone, call me, right? Call me, maybe. You
Yes.
know, like the song. You know what I
I
mean?
love it. Mate, what do you do for fun? What's outside of work? What's music, sports, gym, family, kids? What's fun time?
So having kids and some of them play sports. If you are a parent and have kids or just they're just starting to play sports, I have so much fun going to those games, even the ones we lose by 30, 40 points in a basketball game. There's some innocence, some like the pureness of the sport, right? You don't have to go like, oh, I hear the Dubs playing the Lakers. Oh boy, yeah, there's a pureness to those, when your kids are playing. It just invigorates one. Walking in the park is one of the things. I ride a lot. I play guitar, and I hang out time with my family. I mean, I think that's what keeps me going in life.
Awesome. Final question, and you kind of touched on it earlier, but I'd love for you to tell us some more. A book you'd recommend to any founder, any entrepreneur, any investor out there that you feel has truly resonated with you and truly had a profound impact on how you think about your day to day work.
Well, I mean, I gave you deep work, but I'm going to give you the book that changed my career. And it was called The Agony and the Ecstasy. It's a book by John Irving in early 60s. And it was a kind of a story, kind of a novel, but with nonfiction story of Michelangelo. And it was the life of Michelangelo, the famous painter and sculptor. Basically, this is why I changed my career. I went from one career and said, no, I'm going into tech. And this was in my mid 20s. And I decided to do it because I was like, this is what I love to do. Whatever it is that passion you do, and passion is not something that you're just naturally born. You actually have to do it. The research shows you have to do something. Okay. The more we get good at it, the more passionate we get. But once you find that you are attracted to, if there is an opportunity, a career opportunity, something, that's when it becomes really interesting. And if you can marry the two, something that you really are passionate about, because that's what you gravitated towards, and it pays the bills and makes you a lot of money in the end, that's interesting. And that's what that book is about. It's about Michelangelo doing things that he loved to do. He dedicated all his life doing it. And it was not like somebody forcing him. He enjoyed it. He loved it.
So you're saying this is a book that you read and this was the reason you got into tech?
Yes.
Wow. So was it the passion piece? Was it reading that and thinking, feeling, I talk about, like for me, I say I'm passionate about writing, but I probably don't write as much as I would like. So based on that logic, which I definitely can see it, it's hard to call it passion if I'm not doing it.
That's it. Right. And passion is not, again, there's a lot of behavioral science on the stuff that and research that it's not, we always think that passion is something innate in you. It's not. It's proven. It's not. It's just that thing that you do more. If you do more of it, you practice more of it, becomes a passion. Why? Because you get a positive feedback. And
Mm.
that positive feedback just becomes infectious for your mind. You get all that good energy and so you'll have some drawbacks here and there, but if you're dedicated and you continue to do it. For me, it was coming back from work, full-time work, and coming home. And what would I do when I was a kid in my mid 20s? I was working on a computer. And I wasn't working on a computer playing video games, not that there's anything wrong with video games, but I wanted to break the computer. I wanted to understand how did it work? How did that operating system work? What was that? And that was the thing I would gravitate towards to. Like I wanted to learn Linux. I want to understand how do you do that? How do you write that code? What is it? So it just became exciting and more and more. And once you started writing code, and you're like, oh, look, I can do this. And it just was a virtuous cycle. So that's what the book's about.
That's amazing. So Mary, would you have started a career in tech had it not been for that book?
Would I have started a career in tech if it wasn't for that book? No. It was realizing what am I doing with my life? What is it that I want to do in life?
It was an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. I learned a lot, and you and I have known each other now for probably a little under a year, but it's been definitely a pleasure having you on, and I'd love to have you on again a bit further down the line with the success of Aembit. Thank you so much. It really has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Faris. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Serrana Labs and powered by Harrison Clark. At Harrison Clark, we're at the heart of Silicon Valley's evolution and at the intersection of search and venture, funding the companies shaping the future and connecting them to the most elite cloud, data, and AI talent. To learn more, visit harrisonclark.com. If today's episode challenged your thinking, then share it with someone who's driving innovation. For even more insights on achieving product market fit, subscribe to our newsletter, The PMF Playbook, where we break down the journey from zero to product market fit. Visit thepmfplaybook.com. For more episodes, follow us on social media or visit insidethesiliconmind.com. Until next time, stay curious, stay consistent, and stay inside the Silicon Mind. See you soon.